Hi, I'm R.D. Peters, and this is the third part to Stonehenge, how they built it. And in this segment here, I'm going to give a little bit of information on who I believe built it, or at least what their main occupation was. I believe these were people who were primarily seafaring people, and they had a colony so far inland, but I think they primarily made their survival through the sea. And I do think that perhaps some of them had ventured pretty far at one time and seen monuments possibly the Egyptians built, came back, and with the ability to use rope and perhaps had learned a few skills, translated those to their civilization. And these were strong leadership type men with strong will and strong mind and body, and were able to motivate others and to keep them under their rule, so to speak. Not enslave them, but to bring them to their ideas. And right now I'll turn the camera around and show what I think the job site might have appeared like as they were beginning to put their first piece of Stonehenge together. I believe they would have had their two uprights in place, and then there's their cross bears, which I believe they brought many of these there first before they started working on the heavy stones. And as you've seen in part 1 and part 2, they had a carriage they brought these here with. And when they got to this point, and they decided to put a crossbear on top, they would have had it situated there like this. And they may have used another stone to originally get this started, so they wouldn't have to use so many of the blocks that they'd have to cut, and also to give us stability going up. Okay, I'm going to cut this segment off and come back with the next part of this as I manipulate the model. Okay, they would have had this original stone here on top of the carriage, then using levers would have went under one end and pry up and over on this until they get a stone over on the top of another stone, possibly not. They may have just used all logs, interlocking logs here to go up with their cross stone. But we don't know all that information, so it's information missing in action. So take your best opinion, what you might think, but for sure they did it one of these ways. Okay, I'll be back in a moment with the next manipulation. Okay, here we are at the final step. As you can see, the ancients would have used these notched logs here in a to build this up one step at a time. And the reason I actually use this concept, because when I was a younger man and built riverboats, we put locomotive engines inside riverboats using the same process, except we took railroad ties and went inside a new boat before the top was placed on it and made a device, a rigging like this here using railroad ties, and then two 100-ton cranes would lift a locomotive engine on top of our rigging. And then to get the engine down into the boat, at each side here we would put a jack in there and jack up a little bit on it, take a log out, let that end down. Then we do this side until we work the engine down inside the boat and put it on its engine girders. So I know this actually will work, and you can do it going upward also. They would have used levers and wedges until they got this to this point right here. And then using the device that I displayed in both part 1 and 2 with ropes and legs, they could attach to this and move this stone on over to the top of the two uprights. And then the cross stone would be pried and manipulated using scaffolding, men working on there. This stone here in this operation would not be difficult as much as it would be intricate in order to prevent knocking one or both of these stones over, or all of the rigging at the same time. It would just take and require a cautious crew of people. And at that time, they would call that segment done. And that's my opinion on how this was created. At that point in time, they would have moved on to the next segment. But like I said before, they solved this problem one time and then duplicated it until they got the entire Stonehenge built. That concludes my theories on how the ancient people built Stonehenge. Of course, there are other people who have different opinions, but I can assure you it was not extraterrestrials, aliens, or Merlin the magician. It took some hard work by hardworking people who knew how to build, and that's one reason I estimate that this was built by men who were seafaring men. They knew how to make boats, they knew how to make rope, and they knew hard work. They were not strangers to that. And I also have an opinion on why Stonehenge was built. Most scientists will tell you it was a calendar to tell them the seasons for planting and such things as that. However, I disagree with that completely because you and I know in today's world, with sophisticated weather prediction equipment, a farmer does not go by the date when to plant. They go by how the weather looks out the window. And these people lived in nature and they planted when the weather warmed up enough to where the season was appropriate. Instead, I believe this was a way to keep track of time for the purpose of reproducing the human race, the people, the captains, the chieftains, the leaders of this society would want the women to become pregnant, to bear children at a time that they would have the best chance for survival. So they would, to my opinion, this was an altar developed for childbearing, because these were men who needed population. They needed to increase the number of people that they had for both protection, but also work and creating a bigger, better society. And the most valuable thing they had were their children. For the new generation to have a bountiful new generation. So it's my opinion that they did mark the dates, the calendar for childbearing, and encouraged childbearing during certain months because they wanted these children born in the springtime where there'd be an abundance of food, of good weather, so they could get them off to a good start before the following winter would arrive. And that makes more sense than they were keeping track of the stars, waiting for the next spaceship to bring down. The engineers tell them how to build this Stonehenge. The obvious thing to anyone even today that raises a garden is it doesn't matter if that calendar tells you it's the first day of spring. That does you no good at all. You have to wait for the weather. But something more important than that would be, if you were going to bear children, to know the days and the months of the year, so you could plan that parenting, to have your children at the most opportune time for them to begin life and to expand the family. So that's my opinion on how Stonehenge was built. The sailing people, I believe that it required to know how to engineer and develop this process. And the reason for the altar was the unification of families and the promotion of future families and the population growth. Now, what I've shown here is a method also, too, that would require manpower. And unlike some other theories that suggest that they are going to create devices and that decreasing manpower was not in these people's best interest to decrease manpower. They needed large numbers of strong, fit men who were craftsmen, who were strong, to keep their population growing and to protect it once they did have a large population. So, take it or leave it. I think I have the best opinion on why and how Stonehenge was built, and I have experienced it moving heavy objects and how it was done. So, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for other videos that I'll create on other ideas of how ancient monuments were built. The next project will be that of the pyramids. So stay tuned. Thank you.